Net revenue retention KPIs are probably one of the most important that you should pay attention to as a founder. The only moat in software is true customer love. I never, ever imagined that a software that we would produce would have that profound impact. Don't get me wrong, like Apple was in there, Google was in there, Microsoft was in there, but they all went the app-based approach because they don't understand this market. And we went the text-based approach. And so we went from 0 to 1 really quickly. I talk a lot about like learning the native language, being able to translate how what we do impacts their bottom line.
Hey, producer Sam here. Just giving you a heads up. Craig's audio and video is kind of shit for the first minute, but from there on out, the episode is fine. And now let's get back to the show.
So Sheila, one thing you need to know is somehow I wore a hat once and it did really well on our Instagram and TikTok channel. So I try to grab a hat or something fun. So today, I'm not gonna wear it because I'm cold, but I got this shirt and I wanted to show Matt and Sam in the audience. So are you ready? I will show you the said shirt.
I'm ready. Let's see the shirt.
I'm nervous. Oh.
As a diehard fan, I saw that shirt. It got, speaking of TikTok, it like showed up in my Instagram, showed up in my feed. I'm like, I gotta buy it. I gotta wear it. I'll wear it for real next time. It's just cold today. So what do you think? Die Hard?
Man, you should have gave me the heads up that it was like a fun shirt.
No, you don't have to. Yeah, you're good.
I know. I would need to go change. I didn't get the memo.
Well, we're not good at memos. We're going to talk to Sam. Sam, we got to talk about this. Your memo writing is just awful.
From ABM to PLG, from Medic to MedPick, the world of business is constantly evolving. We'll cover the who, what, where, when, why, and most importantly, how you get the transaction. I'm Matt Amundsen, and he's Craig Rosenberg. Let's get started. So welcome to the show, everybody. I'm so happy to have a very special guest with us today. We met a few weeks ago, and I was just so incredibly impressed by her story. And, not just the story of her business, the story of the founding of her business, and the incredible success that she's had early on. So I'm so happy to welcome Sheila Stafford to our show today. Sheila, thank you for joining us. And tell us a little bit about TeamSense.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So TeamSense is, at a 10,000-foot view, it's a digital connection to frontline employees. Mm-hmm. What a lot of people don't really understand is that most frontline employees don't have a company email address, a company phone, or access to a company computer. We particularly serve folks in the manufacturing and logistics sector, but we've seen some growth in other verticals that we can talk about at some point. And so what we do is a Trojan horse strategy. And so we solve like a really painful problem, which is attendance management. Yep. And attendance management is so painful. Everybody hates it. It's kind of like Expensify back in the day where like before you had to like do your expense reports and you're like, nobody was like, oh, this process is amazing. Everybody's like, it sucks. So we solve that. And there's some magic in that everybody hates it. We come in and they're like, you guys are amazing. But it also gives us a connection with 100% of the employees because it's a required workflow that they're needing to do. And then the most important, especially in this business environment, is that attendance management is very, very closely linked to your ability to produce goods. And so we can show an ROI, like massive ROI in a matter of weeks.
That's amazing. Yeah. So we always like to sort of kick off the show with a question that Craig refers to as Matt's feature enhancement 2.1. Is that, if I nailed it, Craig?
2.1. It's now 2.1A.
2.1A.
We now that we've put it in play, it's been improved and optimized. So
I love it. Continuous improvement.
Yeah. So tell us a story about, sort of TeamSense, maybe a sales motion or could be, just about, the founding of the business that, would be surprising, could be hilarious, could be heroic, related to sort of the growth of the company.
So one thing that's kind of magical about TeamSense is that we've got incredible customer love, right? Like our net revenue retention numbers are, over 125%. Like it's
amazing.
Ridiculous, which is awesome. And so most of the time when I go and visit customers, folks are just like in love and just effusive and they love when we come visit. And so we were going to visit a customer that was in the Phoenix area. And as we're going in, my customer success person was like, hey, like, I don't know how this is going to go. Like, they haven't been like super engaged with us. And like, I try to, put a meeting on their calendar to see how it's going, to share more capabilities of the system, and like they'll no show. And so like, I know you're used to getting like this really warm reception, but like, I'm just giving you a heads up. Like, we might be in for like a churn. And I was like, okay, like, let's see what happens when we get in there. And so we go in there and we sit down and we're waiting. And normally HR finds us and is kind of our champion, but we're generally always paid for by operations. And so in this case, the head of HR comes in, and this is a large like aluminum processing company. So she comes in and she sits down, and I kind of kick off the conversation with like, tell me how it's going. How's the impact of TeamSense? And I would say, one thing about our go-to-market is I'm very, very adamant of discussing our business impact, because in the end, like, that's what really matters, and like real dollars impact, not just like, oh, you're going to have better, I don't know, I'll pick on other HR software, like employee engagement. Great. But like, where does that like lead to dollars is really big and important for me. And so this HR person is like, it's been fantastic. Like, we've seen, decrease in overtime. We've seen increase in productivity and like all of the KPIs. And we're like, in my mind, I'm just like, ding, 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 like checking them off. And then she says to me, but like, that's not where we like really, really kind of realize the value from your software. And I was like, okay, like, tell me more. And so she proceeds to tell me, like, on our attendance, we'll say workflow, it's custom to every customer. And so they can write whatever they want, and like, we'll deliver the workflow to the employee. And theirs in particular has like a form for them to fill out, kind of an open, dialogue. And so one of the employees was filling out the form, and in their attendance, we'll say section, they put for their reason for absence that they're going to heaven. They submitted the absence. It immediately went to the supervisor and to HR in the way that they've set up the notification structures. And both of them look at it and they're like, that's really weird. Yeah. And so they decide that they're going to call a health check for this employee. And so sure enough, they called a health check. They go and they found the employee in a mental health crisis. So then this woman tells me, like, the real value that you have is you guys played a part in saving this employee's life. And I was just like, holy shit. Like, like when you're a founder, like I never, ever, ever imagined that a software that we would produce would have kind of that profound impact. Like I said, I've always preached like dollars. But never in my mind would you think like an attendance management solution could actually, save somebody's life. And so that was just one of those like holy shit moments for me as a founder, and kind of like reignited a bit of like why we're doing this and the impact that we can make.
Wow, that is an unbelievable story. I can't. That's incredible.
What category does that fall in? Because it is a new breakthrough. It's 2.1B.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, all right. Well, that was you hit the compelling story thing, but wow.
Yeah, we don't talk about it much like publicly. Sure. Like you don't market that, right? Like, oh, like, someone was, struggling and needed help, and like, what a cool way for them. They probably thought nobody was listening or that nobody cared. Yeah. And then to have like that company react in that way. And that was kind of my response, was like, okay, like, we didn't do that, to be honest. Like, we for sure helped facilitate and gave the communication, which typically there's a communication gap between the frontline and their employers, and that's what we solve. But like, their team made the decision of like, we should take action. You could easily just write it off and be like, nah, that's weird. People say weird shit all the time, but they took action and made it happen. And so that was just, incredible and good for them for doing that. So needless to say, the customer did not churn.
Yes.
They were just quiet and apparently busy.
Yeah. Wow. That's an incredible story. Talk about the intersection between great software and a company that truly cares about its employees and is willing to go the extra mile. Probably a good reason for why they purchased your solution in the first place is because they truly care about their employees. That is exceptional.
Yeah, 100%.
So we usually, let me take a breath there, because we don't typically hear stories like that. We usually follow up that question with something that is supportive to the go-to-market leaders that are listeners to our show, which is what is something that you're seeing out in the market? Could be a best practice, could be sort of a standard play that people like to run that they think is right, but in reality, they're actually wrong about it, and they should be thinking about it differently. It could be a metric that they measure their company. It could be, sort of a process that they use to acquire customers. And this is a great place for us to understand your unique perspective on how your business is going to market.
Yeah. I mean, I think email is dead, just like dead as dead can be. And, all of these AI solutions on hyper personalization are like just making it worse, right? Like all these MarTech folks came out here and just like completely destroyed a really good channel. I see my inbox every morning I get up. There's like, I don't know, do you guys curse? I curse a lot.
Yeah, this is an adult show.
Okay.
This is a curse-full show, not a...
All right, fair enough. I wanted to double check. I just delivered a keynote on Monday where they're like, do not curse. I was like, fuck, how do I do that?
I knew I liked you. All right.
And so I get up in the morning and there's like fucking like 100 messages of just all, and it's like super like, oh, like we both went to Duke. I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like,
yeah.
And like everybody's got like their hyper personalization, and it's gotten to the point of if I don't recognize the name, I am not going to answer it. And I think that's the same with my customers. And so if you think about like, okay, if email is dead, unless you have a recognizable name, like how much more important are like personal referrals? And like, I think that as AI continues to ramp, like the human aspect is going to be so much more important. And I think that goes to some of the other things is like, all of these, like, I'll call it old folks in marketing that have like aged out, like they're going to become so much more important, right? Like before you had email, like PR, for example, right? Like think about AI. AI delivers answers, not links. Like there's no points for second place. Like you either get that answer to be your product or you're out. And like how do you get your answer to be that product is you need to have like the answer with a really high domain authority. And like, how do you get a really high domain authority to talk about your product? PR. And so like all these PR firms that went out of business, like PR is going to be new. Similarly, events and direct mail, like all of that stuff to stand out. Cause I think email is just completely dead. Don't even waste your time.
So you wouldn't use it at all, even with all of, so let's say you had a really effective PR strategy. So you've now carpet bombed your target market. So would email work then? Or are you saying don't even waste your time? You were to PR yourself into people coming to you, or how do you think about that?
I mean, our business up until this point has been largely built on inbound. So like we do really well there. Like obviously you'll close inbound. But it is just so hard to get outbound, I mean, from an email standpoint. And so like, do we still send emails? For sure. But I expect zero return. It's more on like brand awareness. Like maybe they see that it's from TeamSense, but I'm not even relying on that. It's like, okay, how do I get smarter? Like, how do I, one of the things that you mentioned is we've got incredible number of like enterprise accounts and like, existing customers. And like, I've got this incredible customer love. So like, should I spend time on building up my community and spend resources on getting them to make intros for me, or like cold email outbound and like tweaking the subject line or the body? Like it's just, I don't think it's going to work, and I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze.
Okay, Matt, is it all right? So let me give you what I know about you and why you're on the show and what you just said, because I think this is really cool.
Yeah.
Because so when Matt was like, oh my God, I just met this amazing person, Sheila, and we were with Sam, and I guess Sam was there too, because he's like, oh yeah. And he's like, and I'm like, why? And he's like, dude, like they got into the enterprise so fast as a young company. And for a lot of the folks that, like Matt and I advise, it's like, you got to knock down doors, right? And what you did, so I'd love to sort of merge the two things together, was you built around domain expertise. So like And that was sort of you built this sort of cloud of domain expertise around these enterprise companies, and they came to you. Is there a way we could merge the two? Because I think this is really interesting. The speed with the idea that, this is about PR is actually extraordinary. It's really interesting to me.
I think, like obviously I'm probably older than the average founder that you guys talk to, I would dare say. I have just tremendous experience. Like I worked in and around manufacturing for over 20 years. And so what happened when we founded the company, if we back up to the founding story, is that in 2020, when COVID hit, I was working at Fortive at the time, and Fortive is a publicly traded industrial technology company. I was an executive there running kind of a business unit. And so COVID hits, and it like dawns on me that like, holy shit, like 3 things are going to 100% be true. One is the government is not going to allow manufacturers to stay at home. Like the workers have to work. You can't assemble a pickup truck from your kitchen table. It's too much of the GDP. Like they are going to figure out a way. Boom. Okay, that's a given. The second is that what I know about manufacturing is that all of the communication, because they don't have a company email address, they don't have a company phone, they don't have access to a company computer, is all done in person via toolbox talks, via stand-up. And if I need to get a hold of them, they do phone trees. Like you call these people, you call these people. Like I know that to be true. I'm still working in manufacturing across the board. The speed at which OSHA was changing requirements by law nationally, the speed at which states were layering on requirements, the speed at which towns were layering on requirements meant that there was no chance that these guys were going to be able to keep up with the communication protocol in order to reach the employees. Like think about it, like you've been exposed and like you've got to do all of that tracking by law. And so the big bet that we made that really kind of transformed, and again, like on my experience, was I had the lovely opportunity to go ask frontline workers, we'll say months ago, to download the company sponsored app. And like you go in there and they ask, like they're intelligent people, right? They're like, okay, are you paying for my phone? No, we're not going to pay for your phone. Okay, like you need me to sign do you have access to my device? And you say, no, we don't really like have access, but like if your device is involved in a breach, then you have to sign this like bring your own device policy from big corporate. And they're like, okay, no, F you. And you're like, okay, like I don't think they're going to download the app, right? Like it's just not going to happen. And so we bet on the fact that people will not download a corporate sponsored app no matter what. And we build all of our system via text message. And so what text message enables is that like you have rapid adoption. And so that was the big bet. And so the opportunity was, can we help companies with the requirements that COVID was driving in the background? Again, the Trojan horse strategy, that we would establish the digital connection, that you could use lots of other things, and we would be that communication channel. And so when I was at Fortive, there's a little bit longer story, but the short of it is the CEO of Fortive was like, hey, if you found that company, we will be your first investor. And so Fortive became our first investor, and we got out the door, which was amazing. And then like super early, we were able to sign like logos like Pella Windows and Hunter Douglas. I think Pella Windows was maybe our 3rd customer ever. But again, like we had this big market impetus where, everybody needs a solution. There are no incumbents. It's an all-out foot race. And don't get me wrong, like Apple was in there, Google was in there, Microsoft was in there, but they all went the app-based approach because they don't understand this market. And we went the text-based approach. And so we went from 0 to 1 really quickly, continued to kind of grow with those enterprises. And then, as like the COVID was sunsetting, as the vaccine was coming out, we just changed kind of our Trojan go-to-market, right? And so instead of helping them with COVID, now we're helping them with attendance, and like the product just continues to live on. And I think the most crazy part is when we decided to go with attendance, I thought like, oh my gosh, COVID was the biggest business opportunity we've ever seen in our lives. And so like, we're going to go with attendance, and like our go-to-market's going to change. We tripled the business in the first quarter that we launched attendance. And I was like, what? Like, this is insane. Like, who knew? And have just been on kind of a fun ride ever since.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I mean, I would
You went to the enterprises out of the gate.
Yeah.
That's I mean, just like normally, Matt, we're dealing with someone who starts small and wants to move, right? So they're this was like, oh, well, I'm in a enterprise, and you just boom.
Well, that's what the problem is, right? Like you have to understand like where is for sure, like, even today, like TeamSense and what we do, if you have a site that's less than 100 people, you probably don't really, really feel the pain yet.
Yeah.
And so as your number of people like expand, like, and your span of control of like the individual supervisors expand, like it's really, really painful. And so I think, again, it's that deep understanding of the space and like where they feel pain, I think, A. And then B, I talk a lot about like learning the native language, like being able to translate how what we do impacts their bottom line, because at the 10,000 foot level, you can only like help them increase revenue or help them reduce cost. And so like, where are you? And then how do you link that very clearly on like, for example, we reduced no call, no shows by 60% within the first 30 days. And so a no call, no show, for folks that don't understand, is where you expect an employee to show up, but they just don't. And so the implications of that are, if I worked at General Motors assembling pickup trucks for when I first came out of undergrad, the implications of that are like, we have an assembly line and like you're installing rear seats and you're installing the front console and I'm installing the rear tire, and like rear seats isn't there, the truck doesn't move. And so if we like the buzzer hits, we're all supposed to be there and that person's absent, I immediately have downtime because now I need to figure out who's going to go there. But because the jobs are different, you have to be specially trained, right? Like there's a special device to pick up the rear seat assembly. You have to thread it through a pickup truck that is moving down the line. You have to put it in place. You have to drop 8 fasteners every minute on the minute. I can't just take rear tire, who's like a pit crew, zipping lugs and be like, oh, you're on rear seats today. Like it doesn't work like that. Yeah. And so the supervisor has to like reshuffle everybody. And like manufacturers know inherently like what 1 minute of production is worth. And so when I was at GM 20 years ago, they would yell like $10,000 a minute, right? Like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And like the clock is just ticking and you're like freaking out trying to get everything up and running. And so if I can reduce no call, no shows, which is automatic downtime, like let's say that you get it up in 3 minutes, that's still 30 grand, just one day, just one incident of one person at a factory of 3,500 people, 5,000 people. Like the ROI is just so fast. But I understand that because I live that. And so I can talk to them and say, and they're like, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Like this makes perfect sense on why we'd go do this.
The thing that I feel like you're saying without saying is, there's oftentimes founders that get sort of enamored with categories, whether they're like, hey, I want to build something in health tech, fintech, MarTech, sales tech, whatever it is. They see a gap in the marketplace. They're like, oh, yeah, when I was working here, when I was working there, when I was working with these types of customers, like this was a pain point. I think I'm going to go build something there. What I find so fascinating about you, Sheila, is that you have such a deep subject matter expertise in these customers very specifically. Like, this is not stuff that you've learned over the course of your journey as being a CEO. It's all the stuff that you learned over the course of your career that has led you to be a CEO. And so that knowledge deeply informed the way that you built a product and brought a product to market. It's not like, hey, we're just going to create an MVP and throw it out there and see what are the parts that people really latch on to, and then we'll turn those into our primary, benefits or values of the business. And I find that so fascinating. And I think it's one of the things that's probably led to the early success of your business is that you can just go out there and speak customer right off the bat. Learning the language of your buyer becomes such a critical component to early or even full scale or fully scaled success of a business.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think about that a lot on just kind of the founder journey and like what are the elements that have made us successful. The other thing that's unique about what I've seen is I remember reading the story about the founder of Vanta. And so she went and it's like, oh, I saw that like this security thing was going to be a thing. And so she took a year off and like read everything about it, like just kept consuming information and then like, educated herself on it and then went like, okay, great. You're going to run that playbook. Try to do that in manufacturing. The public is not invited. Like you don't get to go in and see how the Pierce fire trucks are built You don't get to go in and see how General Motors is like puts their trucks together. You don't get to go in and see this aluminum factory. And so the ability for others to be able to understand and build with such deep knowledge in this space in particular is really hard. Where like you see a lot of software out there that is servicing, retail or hospitality. Like great, like you could sit in a store and quickly understand some of the details. Like you're allowed to go in there, but you're not allowed to go inside these factories.
Mm-hmm. I have this thing. Oh, wait, Sam raised his finger. Just so you know, we've trained him to not raise his hand. Okay, Sam, now that you've raised your finger, what can we do for you?
I was just going to say there's one kind of case that doesn't fit the mold, because I agree, most of the time you can't go in these factories. However, one of the coolest experiences that I've had, it was a one-day thing. I actually went on a tour of the Toyota plant. It was so cool, and they do so many cool things. But
it's mind-blowing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's why I fell in love with manufacturing. Like I was a high school intern and got this opportunity. They were trying to get more people into manufacturing, and so I got this opportunity to go to the Ford stamping plant in Buffalo. I grew up in Buffalo, New York. And the Ford stamping plant, we're stamping out body sides to the 1998 Ford Windstar. And you can imagine like these presses are like the size of a room, and they would come down on the metal, and like the floor like kind of shakes every time the thing comes down. And then those body sides went up to Canada, to Oakville Assembly, where they actually put the vehicle together. And so as part of the experience, we got to go to the assembly plant. And that is where I was like, this is so cool. Like it's unbelievable, like the number of parts and like the conveyor belts and like the robots everywhere and the vision system. And I mean, this is back in the, the late 90s, early 2000s. And so after seeing that, I was like, that's where I'm going to go work. And that's what kind of inspired me to go get my mechanical engineering degree and why I joined General Motors when I first came out.
That's awesome.
So here's what I was going to say before Sam lifted his finger. Matt, is it okay if I jump in?
Yeah, Sam, any other field trips you'd like to tell us about?
Yeah, what
did you? Well, this one time.
News stories.
No, thank you for your field trip anecdote, Sam. We hope that it does really well on TikTok. The people think I'm like just making things so basic when I say this, but like, I work in venture. I don't know if you know that, but like when you build a company for someone, a lot of people build because of the tech or the innovation to go do, or they build something that does something, right? And then they figure it actually is very hard to market and create a go-to-market unless the founder and the team and the organization has built something for someone. They understand. And by the way, someone can be the ideal customer profile,
ICP,
right?
Sure.
In this case, the manufacturing. I mean, look at you. I have no idea what you're talking about on some of these things, and like, because you deeply understand it and you understand them and you understand how they work. And like, that is how you can build the product, the go-to-market and these things for them, right? More effectively, because you understand them and what they're going through. And like, you had a compelling event like COVID, but look at the way you adjusted is because you understand them and what they're trying to do. I think that is a really big deal. Now, there is hope. Like if you went function and tech first, it's okay, but you got to be able to go build deep expertise into the person and organizations that you sell to in order to be effective. Otherwise, it doesn't, it's very hard to build B2B software unless you do that. So that's the thing I'm hearing from you. It's like, it's this deep embrace. I'm pretty sure you could have made something else too. You know what I mean? Based on all the things you probably will, considering how successful you are in there. But I think that's a really big point.
Yeah, I think, I heard early on, I heard this kind of analogy of like the market for like a startup, if you consider it like a log, right? And so you've got this log. If you want to catch the log on fire, you don't like take a match and like run it down the log and be like, oh, I hope one of these verticals is going to catch on fire. Like you really kind of like just focus all of your energy, all of your resources on like one like slice of the vertical. And like what will naturally happen is like these kind of ancillary verticals that are right next to that one will like look over and be like, hey, like that looks really interesting. I think we can use it, and they'll start pulling it. And so I think, early on, like obviously we only sold to manufacturing and logistics, but I mentioned our business has been built on inbound. And so we get a lot of inbound interest. And so as we've kind of progressed, it's just been fascinating on the number of verticals like we serve now, even though like we don't even market to them, like still today, like we don't market to them. And I actively will go and meet with them because I think that I don't want to divert like our product team focus. I don't want to divert our support team focus. I want to continue to serve manufacturing logistics for a variety of reasons. But when they come in, I was like, listen, like we're not for you. Like we're built for them. Like help me understand like what problem are you trying to solve to like make sure that like we can do what they expect us to do and that we can still do it well. And so what I found is, like one of the early ones was casinos. So I flew out to this casino. They've got large number of hourly employees. And I was like, help me understand, like, what do you want with this? Like, we're not built for you. And when they explained to me like their business model, I was like, oh my God, it is like, if you had just a control room of the casino floor and like we're just looking at all of the kind of like metrics and KPIs, what they're tracking on the ready, you would think there's a manufacturing floor on the other side. I mean, they're tracking how fast the dealers are spitting out cards, like what their take rate, like you name it, it's nearly the same KPIs. And I was just like, whoa, like that's crazy. And so now we like serve a handful of casinos and they love the product. And so I think, don't worry about focusing early on, like they will pick it up and like you'll be, kind of learning in the process as well, what drives their business.
That's amazing. I think there are so few people that would take a time out and say, hey, you know what? Let me just go evaluate your business and see if I'm actually a good fit for you. In most cases, people are like, oh, you have money to spend. I have a service to sell you, or I have a product to sell you. And I think a lot of early stage businesses learn that the hard way, right? They'll see this sort of big, sexy logo come their way, or a business from outside the category that they traditionally serve come their way. And they're like, wow, this is going to look awesome on our logo scroll. Like, if we could ever convince these people to do a case study with us, like this will be a great PS at the bottom of every prospecting email that we send. And in a lot of cases, if the product is not built for that buyer or for that customer, like sort of retrofitting your product into their business and sort of creating tech debt or diverting product and engineering resources away from, building out the core product to build something very specifically, it can sink a business. Like it doesn't just become like a multi-quarter problem, but like it could like take you out of business. And so I guess talk to us a little bit about, I mean, you gave us the example with the casino, but how do you sort of measure against, wow, this would be awesome for us. This would look great in a board deck versus, I got to be really cautious here about making sure that my resources are being deployed appropriately.
I mean, we make sure that we can add value. Like, I think that's probably the biggest takeaway is like, how are you measuring? Because that's the one thing about manufacturing that I know for sure is that like I can link my benefits that we deliver to the business to dollars, and like we can track that. We can make sure that we're delivering ROI. And so as new folks come in, like, can we do the same thing? Like, what KPIs are they looking at to know whether or not this is successful? And can they articulate that to me? But I think it's really on like founder focus, right? Like we cannot, like we absolutely, to your point, like the business will die if I start imagine like my support team, like we've got hundreds of customers and a handful of support folks. Like if they come in and they've got these like weird problems that they're trying to like fit the system around, like that's going to create problems long term. And it's just this kind of cancer that like grows to the business. Same thing with customer support. Same thing with even the sales team on how they talk about value to the customer. Like you continue to bifurcate, eventually like you lose the message across the board. And so I think it's really having that discipline. I also think that in this day and age, your like net revenue retention KPIs are probably one of the most important that you should pay attention to as a founder, because it really talks about customer love. There's a quote from our board member, Brett Queener, where he tells me, like when you talk about software and like he's old Salesforce. And anyway, he was like, the only moat in software is true customer love, right? Like time and money can solve anything. But if you have true customer love, that's the only moat. And so for me, like that's part like net revenue retention. So like, do we have true customer love? And I'm not willing to like put a chink in our net revenue retention number so that we can take some like shitty account that we shouldn't take anyway for like some short-term, bump in revenue, and they're going to churn in, a year anyway. Like that's just not worth it as a business.
Fascinating. I am, we meet with so many founders, are willing to roll the dice on stuff like this. And, I think the level of discipline that you mentioned there is, that's a critical component. And whether that's like sort of diverting and moving into new markets or going multi-product before you're maybe ready to, like having that level of discipline is important. How do you tell that story like in your board meetings and is the board supportive of, well, I know you have a great board, but
yeah.
How do you drive alignment between yourself and your board?
I mean, I love our board. Like, and this is part of like, as a founder, and I think part of it is I got a little bit lucky, and I can tell the story of how we landed with Bonfire. There's a fun story there, but I just knew like we were like two peas in a pod and like on the same page. And so I think, I'm always talking to Brett. He's on Slack all the time. Like we're driving, like having conversations. And so I think from that standpoint, we tend to always be in lockstep, but knew, when they were investing that we were kind of the same mentality and of the same breed. And so I don't have that problem yet. Now, granted, it's still a pretty small board. But like, it's been great. And I think they're so supportive. And like the last thing that they want is have us make these mistakes and then, die because like we're trying to serve 8 different masters and we don't have a single like unified product plan or like what we're going to build next. I think maintaining that focus, like we do ask ourselves like, okay, like should we continue to build for this vertical and like when would we move to horizontal? Because I very much believe that this business will be that digital connection to all frontline workers. And so being thoughtful of when, but like now it's still too early and there's still too much opportunity. And so it's like, okay, like we'll vet these customers and if we can take them, great. And then we'll learn. And so we've got folks in healthcare that are on the system right now. I think we've got, I don't know, maybe 5 healthcare companies. We've got universities that are on the system right now. And so we can learn about education like through universities. We've got some, we'll say like restaurant food service type. Like one of the ones that we can say is all the frontline workers at LA Dodger Stadium where they play utilize TeamSense. And so like not manufacturing, not logistics, but there you go. There's the hat. Right?
Oh, we love it.
They're phenomenal. And like, like the vetting process for them, we're like, help me understand. And they're like, Sheila, if people no call, no show, or if we have too many absenteeism and we can't open like a specific restaurant, like we only have like 4 hours to make our money. Like that is a huge impact to our business. And I was like, oh shit, like you can link what we do directly to dollars. Like let's chat. Like that means that we're going to be able to do something cool here. And so LA Dodger Stadium, awesome customer of ours. But again, like they kind of came in, we vetted them and it's been a phenomenal partnership.
I mean, of course it is. It's maybe the greatest customer. That's my bucket list customer at some point.
Right?
Yeah. It's just, by the way, all I could think about was as you started to go down that road was, does he have a Dodger hat nearby?
Handy. Yeah.
Boom. And you didn't even know. Like I could have gave you that one, but you didn't even know. That was just pure luck.
Yeah.
Gotta love it.
So, but now, like, now, so like how big is your sales team?
Our sales team is 6 folks right now.
And sorry to go down this route, Matt. I'm just so curious.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
You're so passionate about the story, right? And you're the founder. And then when you expand into having reps go out and again, I'll mention, oh my God, are you serious? I'm sorry about the beep. As I've seen, when you move from like the founder into folks that, basically had to come in and learn the business, how's that transition? I mean, did you hire for expertise or did you hire for skills and build their expertise? How did you expand your knowledge and ability to go in there and like literally walk the floor, I'm sure, and just be able to understand. Or, everyone knows Dodger game and wants to eat a Dodger dog, but like, tell us about that transition and how you bridge that gap, because 6 means you got past the 2 mark and then brought on the new one. So I'd love to hear more about that.
So the very first one, I think, was a pretty special hire. And so this person actually worked with me in my past life. And I knew that he was really good at sales, but uniquely had grown up on the manufacturing floor. So he actually had experience on the manufacturing floor. He did not have SaaS experience, which was unique for both of us, right? Like I ran these businesses in manufacturing before. But I brought him on just knowing that like, okay, like he knows how to sell. I don't need to teach him, like what a funnel is and all of that stuff. So he came on board. And then the 2 of us were kind of sales for a while. And then we got ourselves into like some pretty big like enterprise deals. And I was like, oh man, like I am in way over my head. And so my next move was to get a consultant. And so I got this, this guy that like did enterprise deals and was running kind of a sales consultancy. And so I brought him in to be like, help us understand, like teach Adam, like enterprise sales, like he knows. And he had come from, when I was my time at Ford and Fluke, hardware sales. So he was selling into manufacturing sites with like Fluke products. And so I was like, teach us about this enterprise stuff. So this guy started advising on us and just fell in love with like our company and our customer. And he was like, I'm thinking about closing my business and coming back in. I was like, great. Like, do you want to join us? And he was like, yes. And so I was able to like get him in, which was really helpful. And he laid the foundation for like the basics of, SaaS, which I think is where our gaps were. And then since then, like we've kind of moved towards hiring folks that are experienced in enterprise, like software sales, right? And so it's a typical enterprise cycle per se. And then we teach them a lot about like why it matters, how to help the customer, like articulate the value and kind of like walk them through that. And then I plug in, wherever needed. And so oftentimes like I'll jump in and meet, some of the leaders at those companies to talk a little bit about our story and like why we're built for them and some of those details. And so in short, early on, like went for expertise in the customer, later on went for expertise in the sales process.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I love it.
I don't know about that, but it seemed to have worked.
Well, yeah, clearly. Yeah, so that's great. But when you train for the market, how do we extract what from your brain into these folks' heads? Like, is it like just by you going hand to hand with them, or is there ways that you've been able to do that and enable them to be able to have that same credibility that you have, or they don't and they bring you in? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like we use all of the tools that you'd expect us to use. So Gong has been incredible for us in just being able to like record and like have them listen. And so there's been, a handful of times where I've gotten on with the customers and talked about the founding story and what we did and like kind of pulled out of them like different KPIs that they might be interested in, where we could kind of link ourselves to that value. And so there's for sure plenty of ways for them to kind of self-learn. And then we've got, all of the traditional like training and documentation. I do think, I try to make sure that because like, let's be honest, like the current environment is really freaking hard for manufacturers, right? Like it's like 25% tariffs, 50% tariffs, like,
sure.
It's just like they can't plan their businesses right now. And so have this like irrational fear that the messaging of the way that we go to market is going to change. And if I'm not listening to the customers, like my team won't know just because of the nuances, right? And so I will go in and pick Gong calls. And like literally on Friday afternoon, I listen to like 2 hours of Gong calls. They're random. I switch different AEs and then like I'll have them on in the background as I'm doing other stuff. And then if I hear the AEs that like where they kind of didn't get it right, or they need like a little bit more depth, or the customer is frustrated, or like listening to the customer message, like I'll jump in and be like, hey, like I'm not a stalker. Like I just like to hear the messaging to make sure that we're good. But like here's areas that you can improve. And one of the things that's kind of about manufacturing, and there's this idea of just continuous improvement, right? Of just like getting like 1% better every day. And like there's always tweaks. And we kind of build that into the the ecosystem here of the company. And so like nobody's offended. They're like, hey, thanks for telling me. Like, that's amazing. And I understand that there's some things that I will uniquely know, and I don't necessarily know to like brain dump them until I see it. And I'm like, oh shit, I need to tell them that.
That's cool. I think that's a real thing, from what I can tell, and that you've made that transition really well. Okay, so we have that, and now you've got this ability to successfully onboard sales reps. I'm going to move back to marketing and the PR stuff.
Yeah.
So what is the strategy there? Is that are you the focal point? Like, how are you guys sort of carpet bombing the market from a PR perspective, from both the content and storyline to like other sort of tactics that go along with that?
Yeah, we've done a lot of experimentation here. I think I'm really unique in the space where somebody who's kind of like grown up in manufacturing is now in technology. Like, that is rare in general. And then the fact that I'm a woman makes it even rarer.
Sure.
And so I definitely get a lot more attention on like my personal LinkedIn than the company LinkedIn. Like, we could post something on the company and like nobody really follows the company, but people tend to follow me. And so I'm really thoughtful of that and like what I share and like who are the audiences. What I found is that even like when we were early starting the company, I worked at GM and Whirlpool Corp and Fortive and stuff like that, as I mentioned. And when we were founding and I wanted like, hey, can I just get your ear? Can you give me some feedback on this product? Like, is this something of interest to you? When I reached out to my network, men and women, the women were like 4 times more likely than the men to actually say yes and follow through on it. The men would be like, oh yeah, sure. Like, I'll connect you with someone. And like, it just never happened.
Yeah.
And so early on, I was like, there is something there about like women in the network. And so what I've kind of uncovered, and the keynote that I actually spoke on Monday was with the Women in Manufacturing group, is that like, that's like a really, really strong like sisterhood. Like, you look at somebody and you're like, you're the plant leader at such and such giant factory. Like, you kick ass because like you're the only plant leader in the entire North America that is a woman, and like you're doing your thing. And there's this like mutual respect that seems to happen. It's like, that's a really great area for us to kind of like poke. And like, it happens that women are in a lot of really big companies and they want to help like other women succeed. And so like, might not help most of 98% of your audience, but like, it works really well for us. And so if I have a contact there, I will ask, especially if it's a woman, like, hey, help me out. Like, can you connect me with the right person or give me some feedback or whatever? I think, doing that on LinkedIn is better. We've seen good luck. Here's a secret. Like, they're going to be appreciative that I'm telling them. There's a product out there called Stacker. And we just use Stacker. And what they are is they basically, you pay them to post articles to Stacker. Then Stacker will, are you guys familiar with Stacker? Mm-hmm. Okay, so then Stacker will basically collect a variety of articles and then make them available to like local media so that like they can fill spots, right? Like, local media is always looking for stories, for stories. And so we have a lot of proprietary data on like manufacturing in general and absenteeism in general. And so we were able to make some cuts on places where there were ICE raids. And like, what happened? Like, did folks, like, when the ICE raids were announced and going to happen, like, did we see any fluctuations in attendance? And we were able to find that there was some interesting data. And so we wrote an article, put it up on Stacker put it on the Newswire, and then now all of a sudden, like, we're getting syndicated across a lot of like really local, where like manufacturing is big, which is perfect for our market. And so like, that's another one where, we've used PR to kind of continue to gen. And like, again, it's like, what data do we have that's really interesting that happens to be kind of in line with what's happening in the world? And then, events continue to be strong. Like, obviously meeting in person is really great. You have to pick your events. And then we're toying with direct mail. I think, you've got to break through. And I don't know, sometimes we have these crazy ideas because I'm pretty convinced that like just traditionally, like you have to be unique. And so I don't know, I like, my team jokes, they're like, Sheila's the idea fountain, like some of which are great, like let's go do that. Some of which are terrible, which is fine. Like, just tell me they're terrible. I don't care. But, we're toying with, because we drive so much ROI, like what if we just sent like to a factory, like a giant box of like 100 grand candy bars and be like, this is how much money you could save. Like,
yeah,
because it's like literally like that. And you're like, okay, there's no way that they're not going to get a response. I think, one of our
great idea.
Right?
I don't know the percentage of ideas that people at your office call crazy and throw out. That one is a good one.
Right.
And if you need delivery, Sam may be going on a field trip to one of these
factories. He's going to Toyota. Toyota's a great prospect for us.
I love that. Yeah. Have some fun.
And try it out. And like, I don't know. So lots of fun opportunities, but then tie in. And so, yeah. That would be my recommendation.
And by the way, Matt, how I actually said PR instead of LinkedIn because like a lot of the guests on the show are just LinkedIn is their key platform.
Yeah.
And then you went to LinkedIn and like it is, man, that thing is the most powerful platform right now in B2B. Like it is nuts, man.
Yeah. Do you know what's wild? I was talking to an investor and he had just gotten off a phone call and he's like, Sheila, like this is crazy. I just got off this call with the most enterprisey of enterprise software. That was how he described it. Didn't tell me what it was though. And he's like, you're not going to believe it. 100% of their pipeline comes from TikTok. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, it's crazy because the algorithm is just so good that even though it's like completely like people are on TikTok like personally, not looking for business and like, yet they're still able to drive it. And like, I am not a TikTok user. I am old, but I'm like, shit, like we're going to try it. Like, what do we got to lose, right? Like put a couple grand at it and see like, if this guy's saying it works for enterprise, I mean, we might as well try that channel. So I'll keep you posted. We don't have it up and running yet, but we're getting our content ready to go.
Love it. Well, unbelievable show. This was incredible. I mean, full of great stories, both like heartwarming and, stuff that we can all sort of take to market like immediately. And that's what we love is not just the strategy of how to build a great company, but the tactics that are driving that great company. So Sheila, thank you so much for joining us today. This is your and my second great conversation, and every time I'm wrapping up talking to you, I'm looking forward to the next time we can talk. This was great.
Likewise, Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. And by the way, now that just to warn you, Sheila, part of the cuts that will come out will be about my accusing me of using AOL for my internet. It happens. Yeah. I deserve it.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
All right. Thanks for coming.
Absolutely.
That was the transaction. That was perfect.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of The Transaction. Craig and I really appreciate the fact that you've listened all the way to the end. What are you actually doing here? For show notes and other episodes, please visit us at thetransactionpod.com. Like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other place you get your podcast from. Either you have walked away from your podcast device, or this is playing somewhere in the background. Someone in your house would really like for you to shut this off now.